The Ukrainian Armed Forces are conducting an offensive operation on the Melitopol and Berdyansk axes and are consolidating their positions, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine announced on July 17. The aggressor state is concentrating its main efforts on the Kupyansk, Lyman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Maryinka axes, with 28 combat engagements taking place there over the past day. On the Siverskyi and Slobozhanskyi axes, the enemy conducted an airstrike near Shpyl, Sumy Oblast, over the last day. Russians fired mortar and artillery shells at more than 20 localities, including Seredyna-Buda, Kozache, Stepne, Popivka, Hrabovske in Sumy Oblast and Basove, Vysoka Yaruha, Ternova, Vovchansk in Kharkiv Oblast. On the Kupyansk axis, Ukrainian troops are holding steadfast. During the day, the enemy conducted unsuccessful offensive actions south of Popivka, Kharkiv Oblast. The Russian forces also launched an airstrike near Kyslivka. Kamyanka, Novomlinsk, Vorokna, Kupyansk, and Kyslivka in Kharkiv Oblast came under artillery and mortar fire. On the Lyman axis, the enemy conducted unsuccessful offensives east of Vysoka, Donetsk Oblast, over the course of the day. Russians conducted airstrikes near Bilohorivka in Luhansk Oblast and Siverskyi in Donetsk Oblast. Nevsky and Bilohorivka in Luhansk Oblast and Torsky, Spern and Rozdalivka in Donetsk Oblast came under artillery fire. On the Bakhmut axis, the Ukrainian Armed Forces successfully repelled all enemy attacks in the areas of Orikovo-Vasilivka, Hrabovske and Ivanovsky. The enemy also attempted to regain lost ground northwest of Kharkiv, but was unsuccessful. Russian troops carried out airstrikes in the areas of Pivnikny and New York, Donetsk Oblast. More than 10 settlements suffered from enemy artillery attacks, including Vasyukivka, Bodanivka, Chasiv Yar, Bila Hora, and Druzhba in Donetsk Oblast. On the Avdiivka axis, the enemy launched an airstrike near the town of Avdiivka. At the same time, the aggressor shelled over 10 localities with artillery. In particular, Avdiivka, Hrabovske and Nevelsky in Donetsk Oblast were targeted. On the Maryinka axis, the Ukrainian Defense Forces continue to hold back the Russian offensive in the vicinity of Maryinka. The enemy fired at more than 10 localities, including Krasnohorivka, Maryinka and Georgievka in Donetsk Oblast. On the Shakhtarsk axis, in the northern part of Staromayorsk, Donetsk Oblast, the enemy made unsuccessful attempts to regain lost ground. It carried out airstrikes in the areas of Novomykhailivka, Ramivka, Blahodatna and Makarivka in Donetsk Oblast. The Russian military shelled the settlements of Paraskeviyevka, Novomykhailivka, Vuhledar, Zolotaniva, Vlika Novosilka and Blahodatna. On the Zaporizhia and Kherson axes, the enemy is focusing its main efforts on preventing the further advance of Ukrainian troops. Russians conducted airstrikes in the areas of Novodorivka, Malotokmichka, and Stepov in Zaporizhia Oblast. The aggressor shelled more than 15 settlements, including Malinivka, Pulyapol, Charivny in Zaporizhia Oblast, Dubchany, Kozatsky, Elvo, Ivanivka, Antonivka, Burhov, Kizimys, Rozliv in Kherson Oblast, as well as the city of Kherson. At the same time, the Ukrainian Defense Forces continue to conduct offensive operations on the Melitopol and Berdyansk axes, consolidate their positions, and carry out counter-battery operations. Russians concentrate efforts on 5 fronts, General Staff report. Russian occupation troops are concentrating their efforts on the Kupyansk, Lyman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Maryinka fronts, where 36 combat engagements between Ukrainian defenders and the Russians took place over the past day. Source: General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Facebook. Information is of 6 o'clock on the 18th of July. Quote, "Last night, Russia launched another missile and drone attack on Ukraine with Iranian-made Shahed kamikaze drones. Information on the consequences of this terrorist attack is currently being clarified. Details: Over the past 24 hours, the Russians carried out 5 missile strikes with S-300 anti-aircraft missile systems and 49 airstrikes. Moreover, they fired from multiple launch rocket systems over 60 times on the positions of Ukrainian troops and settlements. Civilians were killed and injured as a result of the Russian terrorist attacks, and residential buildings, commercial and other civilian infrastructure facilities were damaged. The Russians are concentrating their main efforts on the Kupyansk, Lyman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Maryinka fronts, where 36 combat engagements took place over the past day. On the Siverskyi and Slobozhanskyi fronts, Russian forces kept their military presence. They also launched an airstrike near Bilopilye at Sumy Oblast. The Russians deployed mortars and artillery to fire on more than 30 civilian settlements, including Chuikivka, Boyaro-Lezachi, Iskryskivshina and Pavlivka, Sumy Oblast, and Vovchansk, Seredyna and Budarki, Kharkiv Oblast. Ukrainian forces are holding the line on the Kupyansk front. Russian forces conducted unsuccessful offensive operations to the west of Lyman Pershik, Kharkiv Oblast. They carried out airstrikes on Kyslivka and Kotlyarivka. The settlements of Novomlinsk, Borokna, Zapadna, Kupyansk and Kyslivka, Kharkiv Oblast came under Russian mortar and artillery fire. On the Lyman front, Russian forces conducted unsuccessful offensive operations to the west of Dubrova and the east of Veselk-Luhansk Oblast. They also carried out airstrikes in and around Bilohorivka, Luhansk Oblast, and Ternova and Shpyl, Donetsk Oblast. The Russians shelled Nevsky and Bilohorivka, Luhansk Oblast, and Torsky, Verkhnyokamyansk, Shpyl, Berestov and Rozdalivka, Donetsk Oblast. On the Bakhmut front, the Ukrainian defenders successfully repelled all Russian attacks near Minkivka, to the southeast of Orikovo-Vasilivka and to the southeast of Berdyansk and Ivanovsky, despite being constantly covered by Russian artillery and aircraft. The Russians launched airstrikes on the areas in and around Berdyansk and Oleksandro-Shultin. Over 15 settlements, including Kramatorsk, Koschantinivka, Chasiv Yar, Pleshivka, Oleksandro-Shultin, Pivnikny and Katerinivka, Donetsk Oblast came under Russian artillery fire. On the Avdiivka front, the defense forces repelled all the attacks near Avdiivka despite attacks from Russian aircraft. The Russians bombarded more than 15 civilian settlements, including Novoandriivka, Novobakhmutivka, Avdiivka, Nevelsky and Karlivka, Donetsk Oblast. On the Maryinka front, Ukrainian forces continued to hold back an offensive by Russian troops in the area of Maryinka and Krasnohorivka. The Russians attacked more than 10 civilian settlements, including Krasnohorivka, Maryinka, Hostre, Vesely and Novomykhailivka, Donetsk Oblast. On the Shakhtarsk front, Russian forces carried out airstrikes near Makarivka, Blahodatna, Novodorivka and Komer, Donetsk Oblast. The Russians shelled the settlements of Blahodatna, Vuhledar, Prekostivka, Neskuchny, Novodorivka and Rivnopil in Donetsk Oblast. Russian forces on the Zaporizhia and Kherson fronts are focusing their efforts on preventing Ukrainian forces from advancing. They carried out an airstrike in and around Orikhiv, Zaporizhia Oblast. The Russians bombarded over 30 civilian settlements, including Vilnpol and Vremivka, Donetsk Oblast, Zaliznikny, Verkhnya Tursa, Huliipilsky, Preobrazhenka and Bilahiria, Zaporizhia Oblast, Kherson, Mikhailivka, Novoboryslav, Mykilsky, Injunern and Kizimys, Kherson Oblast. The General Staff of Ukraine's Armed Forces reported on July 18 that Russia had lost 239,010 troops in Ukraine since the beginning of its full-scale invasion on February 24 last year. This number includes 710 casualties Russian forces suffered just over the past day.